Hello, everybody. To all you Once Upon a Time fans out there, all you grieving or otherwise mentally damaged fans, my condolences to you. Um, since I myself am one of you, so I am also messed up in my brain, after today's episode of Going Home. Well, technically yesterday's because it's like 2 in the morning right now. But whatever. Um, so let's talk about this episode. What the fuck? I don't usually swear, but this is a situation that calls for that. Um, Seriously, this episode was mind effing. I don't even have words for it. It's taken me all this time to gather myself, and I've had to talk it over to myself out loud for a while to be able to actually settle down. Um, basically what I've come to the conclusion of is the writers of Once Upon a Time are evil bastards, and if I saw them, I would say, go wherever hell is, go and find it. No, but all I can say is that whenever the next Paley Fest is before um, the second half of season 3 starts up, they had better have top security. Not that I'll be there, but if I was, I'd probably be like, they'd have to hold me back. um, anyway, so about this episode. Um, It was intense. It was very intense. I thought it was good acting. It was definitely, especially on Jared Gilmore's part when he was playing Pan. Um, he did a good. There was several instances when you could see certain facial expressions on him that really made you think like, wow, this isn't Henry, this is Pan. Like, I mean, when he started playing Pan, I was a bit skeptical, like, it just looks like Henry talking like a bad boy. But I thought in this episode in particular, Jared really did a good job playing Pan. Oh my gosh. Speaking of that intro scene, ugh, I cannot even begin to express how appalled I was. I mean, I suppose we all knew it was coming with Felix being killed, you know, but at the same time, I just was not ready for that. I wasn't prepared. I mean, I should have been, but I wasn't. So, you know, but I have my own fan fiction, which I will talk about in other videos, of Pan, Felix, Wendy, and I'll explain a little bit of my Rumbell stuff, but I'll do that in other videos. And trust me, it's much better than the story Once Upon a Time is giving, because at least mine, I like my story much better than theirs, so hopefully you guys will too, and I definitely think you should tune in to my other videos to hear that, so that maybe you could feel a little bit better and not be overwhelmingly depressed at the current series of events. Um, 'Cause I feel like thank God for fan fiction because, if we just had the show, I feel like we'd have nothing. Because we'd be a wreck. It's all we can do to keep ourselves sane, to write our own stories, and, kind of basically it's at a point where we cling to our own stories and we use the show to give us some inspiration, you know? I mean, for face claims and everything, and a little bit of the story. But anyway, okay. Talking about this episode, aside from the traumatic experience of Felix's death and just how wrong that was on so many levels, because he was so. It was just. Pan's just evil. Pan is just dead on evil. I mean, I can't even fathom how somebody could be that evil. I just don't get what goes through your brain to make you that evil. I mean, Lord. And, Felix did not deserve that. He was, it's, no. Uh, I can't even, I can't even voice how flabbergasted and dumbfounded and horrified I am at this whole turn of events with Felix, even though we kind of saw it coming, but didn't want to believe it was coming, maybe. Um, that scene where Pan, oh my god, that scene where Pan was talking to Rumpel in the shop. Oh my god. I mean we thought he was bad before. I mean the way he spoke about his own child. It's just like, and you know what frustrates me that much more about that whole scenario is the fact that how someone could be that pissed off about having a child, and yet I'm like, dude, I'm so freaking pissed off with parents who say they hate their kids, they wish they didn't have them, they're ruining their lives. Well, why did you have a kid in the first place? It was it was obviously, it must have been, unless, for me, when a child is born, unless it's rape, if it's consensual, if it's rape, then it's not the woman's fault. Um, but or whoever's doing the raping, it's not the victim's fault. But if it's consensual, let's put aside rape right now. Let's put aside rape. If it's consensual, that's what pisses me off, is when two people have sex, then they bring a child into the world, and then they don't take care of it properly, they mistreat it, they abuse it, they hate on it, and I'm like, dude, if you weren't prepared to take care of a child, you didn't want a child, you shouldn't have been having sex. And back when, wherever Pan came from, you know, they didn't have safe sex or anything. They didn't have anything like that. And he's just he probably would have said something like, "Oh well, I just had sex. I was caught up in the moment. Whatever. I didn't think of having a child." I'm like, okay. First of all, let me just say this: the whole I didn't plan on it. I got caught up in the moment, and like it just happened, and I didn't plan on having a baby. No, if you don't have protection and you have consensual sex with someone, you have absolutely no excuse whatsoever to say you didn't expect it. If you have unprotected sex, if you don't go into that with knowing that there's a 50% chance that you're going to get pregnant or get someone pregnant and have a baby, then you're stupid. You're stupid. There's no way you could have any brains on you and not know that even primitive natives know that having sex is going to possibly result in having, there's always a percentage of a chance, and it's a 50% chance as to whether or not a baby will be born. I don't know all the statistics, but if you don't have protection, it's always a chance. So for Malcolm, or whatever the frick his name was, he shouldn't have been having sex if he wasn't, because the whole thing about him being pissed off about having Rumpel was the fact that, oh, having a child was holding me down. Well, okay, let's take that back. Aside from the sex part, if you really hated him that much and you didn't want him that much, then why didn't you give him up as a baby? Because in that scene, in that episode where he abandons Rumpel was a little younger than Henry, maybe about like 8 or 9 or something like that. Why did you hold on to Rumpel for that long if you really were that pissed off about having him? Why didn't you go and give him? Why didn't you go at least give him to a family who could take proper care of him, and love him properly if you were that, you know, if you hated him that much. But shouldn't even, like, uh, but the first thing is that if you weren't ready to have a kid, you didn't want to have a kid, you shouldn't have been having sex, and there's absolutely no excuse for you. You can't say something like that and be like, well, I didn't want a child. Well, you shouldn't have been having sex. Okay? It's just not an excuse. When you bring children into the world, you cannot make excuses like that or complain like that. You need to step up and take responsibility, because there was no indication that Rumpel's dad was in any way, in a bad situation when he had Rumpel. There was no indication that, he couldn't take care of Rumpel properly, and or he was having a hard time or whatever. No, the simple fact, as far as we can tell at this moment in time, is that he just didn't want Rumpel. He just didn't want a baby, and he was like, "You ruined my life. I wanted so much more." I'm like, "Well, is he your biological son?" Yes. Okay, then it's your fault that he's created. Okay, you created him, so you have to step up and take responsibility. And if you can't, then you have to give him away to someone who can, and not just hang on to him and prolong that bitterness and all that stuff, which you shouldn't even have for an innocent child. You know, it's just so wrong on so many levels, and it pisses me off so bad. Another thing in this episode that pisses me off is the fact that Belle was sitting on the ground crying, and nobody paid her any mind. It was like she wasn't even there, you know? And it's just like, dude, you know, why is nobody ever paying any attention to Belle? I mean, seriously. It's just kind of boggles my mind, that Rumpel's a big part of the story, but if Belle is like with Rumpel, and yet she hardly gets any notice, and also like, I don't know. Um, this episode's got me so flustered. I'm sorry, it's hard for me to articulate my thoughts. So, pissed off that Rumbel is yet again separated, but take heart, dearies, that, Rumpel's not dead, because the writers and the actors have said on numerous occasions about what's going to happen for Rumbel in the second part of the season, so we know he's not dead. Said that they're going to be in the same land for a majority of the season, so of the second part of the season, so we know that he's not dead. So don't worry, he's not dead. So there's that, but it's also that was such an emotional scene. Emily DeRaven, kudos to her. She really did a good job with that. Robert Carlyle really did a good job with his performance as Mr. Gold. Um, And Robbie K also did an awesome job, even though his character sucked ass. No, he did a good job playing Peter Pan, but Peter Pan's a bitch, so it's kind of like a love-hate thing. Like, you love the actor, you love how he plays the character, he's really hot, but the character, you just want to... It's just not... how anyone could be that evil. Anyway, though, I really hope that, I mean, I know it's kind of futile because we've been hoping this for so long, but I just think it sucks how much Belle is undermined and ignored, especially in a moment like that, especially when Rumpel's done so much for everyone, and yet all they did was stand there and stare at him. I mean, I understand that while Pan and Rumpel were doing their thing, nobody could do anything because Pan had frozen them all, but after that, when Belle was on the ground crying, nobody was paying her any mind. They were didn't Neil. I found his lack of emotion a bit, uncharacteristic, because I know he clearly loved his father. Maybe he was just in too much shock. I don't know. I don't know what it was. But anyway, the fact that everybody else, Rumpel just saved all their asses, and everybody else just standing there like, well, that just happened. Alright, now let's focus on Regina and Emma and all that charming stuff. I'm like, dude, he just freaking saved your asses. Why aren't you, I can't even with these characters anymore. But oh, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see the second half of the season and see where the dang writers, take it from here. I just hope that our characters can be brought back, um, and reunited, and that Rumple and Belle can find each other again, and hopefully be together for longer than an hour. Um, anyway, I feel like this video's gone on for long enough. Uh, I'll make another one, and I'll tell more about my fan fiction stories in the other videos. So, cheers, and that was my 2 cents. Okay? Bye, guys.